All right, fellas. Today I want to talk to you about progression, different forms of it. Likely the problems you're gonna run into with different kinds of progression. And let's just start with number one: linear progression. This implies that typically that reps are staying the same. Let's say on a 5x5. Every week on squats, let's say I'm doing a 5x5, but every week I'm increasing the weight 5 pounds. But eventually, obviously, you're going to stall, right? You're going to get to where that isn't going to work anymore, right? Everything works, nothing works forever, obviously. So, what do you do after that? After linear progression, you're done increasing the weight. You increase the reps, right? Now, instead, let's say I have 12 reps, right? But let's say I start at 8 reps. I can only do 8 reps. My goal is to get to 12. Once I get to 12, I then increase the weight. Let's say I'm back at 8 again, so on and so forth, right? That is what we call double progression. We're turning two knobs to reach a certain goal. That's what it is. And it works. It works wonderfully. But what people get caught up in is it's going to sound counterintuitive, the numbers, right? You get so caught up in the numbers, you don't see the other metrics in which progression is being pushed. Example, lateral raises, right? I'm good. Let's say I stop at the common number of, let's say, 25 to 35 pounds. That's for the number that I'm at currently. In between that range, 25 pounds for me for 15 reps. But it's hard to progress, let's say, a higher weight because then, control gets lost. You start swaying and shit. You know what I mean? It's fucking relatable. You get the idea. But hey, weight and reps aren't the only progression, right? That is not the only measurement of hypertrophy. That's not the only measurement that you can use. Rep quality. Not just rep quality as in you're going super slow Dr. Mike style. That's wonderful, right? That's actually really cool, right? To do that, to have such control of weight. But not only to be like, let's say when I start straining, right? What if the strain just feels a little easier than last week? That's progression, right? What if the last couple of reps just feel a little smoother and I can get just like one last quarter rep out at the end that I previously wouldn't be able to get? That is progression once again. Hypertrophy doesn't happen in isolation of the numbers. It happens with all the little things too, how the weight feels, how much easier it is compared to before. So, if you are stalling and you're not giving it time, hypertrophy and strength shouldn't be measured in days, weeks, or months. This should be measured over years. What is the progress happening over years? And of course, the days, the weeks, and the months, they matter towards that, right? But that's also why you should be keeping track of like the little things, right? Case in point. What if that day you didn't get any sleep before? You're poorly hydrated, right? You're under recovered. These things matter, and that's why you should be taking notes in your training. Little notes, like let's say, oh, this felt easier than last time, whatever, right? I felt like shit, right? Everything felt horrible. My joints were achy. These things matter, right? Because what you do on your best day is not going to be what you do on your worst day, especially the better you get. So, in other words, what I'm saying is the metric of weight and reps should not be the only things used. How it feels, rep quality, hydration, sleep, recovery. These are all metrics you should be keeping track of in your training to properly assess where you're at, and then to perhaps make judgment calls of like whether or not you should switch a variation. Because let's say I've had like 4 straight weeks of amazing recovery, good sleep, good hydration, right? But I'm not making any progress. That's a real plateau. In which case, you need to assess the problem, right? Find the proper solution for you, and then change whatever you need to change to start making progress. That's all I have for you folks. You have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.